Hey folks, good morning, good day, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Tyler Bedster, and I'm the tech adoption lead for Kadena Eco. I'm pretty amped up by that intro, so I got my walkout Kadena hoodie on here, but we have some great content for you here today. We're going to do a project spotlight here of DNA, which for those of you that aren't familiar, is one of the first projects to adopt a Marmalade and drive forward new use cases for NFTs on the blockchain and on Kadena. Very briefly, just wanted to highlight that Kadena Eco has a $100 million grants program that is now live and operating. DNA is one of the first recipients of the grants. And we are actively going through and looking at all the community proposals in detail. And so really would welcome you to propose and feel free to get in touch. We're really excited about all the amazing things that people are building and driving forward new use cases in utility, in DeFi, in gaming, and beyond. But today we're going to really focus in on DNA. We're going to talk to one of the big projects that is building. And so please feel free to ask questions. We'd love to make this interactive. We're going to try and make it conversational. So feel free to post in the comments any questions or thoughts that come up, and we'll try to get around and highlight and engage with some of those. But let me get out of the way here and add some amazing folks here to the stream. First up, I want to bring up the man, the myth, the legend, Abraham. Who has been instrumental on the pack side and on the developer as the CTO of DNA. Abraham, would you mind just telling us a few things about yourself?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having us. Yeah, my name is Abraham. I'm a software developer. I've been developing for about, close to 20 years now. It used to work as a consultant, software consultant for insurance companies. And just like around 2012, I started a company with a couple of partners, startup. And now that phase is over, and now I'm with the DNA since sometime November last year.
So we got Adam up here. Adam is the CEO of DNA. Adam, would you mind giving some quick intro on yourself?
Hi, Tyler. Thanks for the intro. And yeah, I'm not going to be able to beat that opening. So sorry to disappoint the community out there. But I'm Adam Joanu. I'm the CEO of DNA. My background is in commodities and finance. I started DNA about a year ago with Douglas and Abraham. I'm very excited to be here and chat about our project.
Right on. Douglas, welcome up to the stage.
Thank you, Tyler. Hi, guys. I'm Douglas, COO and co-founder of DNA. My background is in commodities as well. That's where I know Adam. And I've more recently, in the last few years, ventured into entrepreneurship, having founded a merchandise company. We work with major brands like the NFL, NASCAR, Major League Baseball, and also have founded a drinks company as well. So very much focused on finance, operations, supply chain.
Right on. So we're going to dive right in just a moment. But first, just wanted to give a quick announcement for those that haven't seen that Randy just posted yesterday on Medium an update as to progress and the latest and greatest with Marmalade. So if you haven't seen that yet, please check it out, entitled How Kadena is Reimagining Blockchain Developer UX. Oh, that's the wrong post. Well, hey, that's another great one. You should look at that one too. But some really exciting developments with Marmalade, including upcoming the much anticipated documentation that's going to be heavily updated live, and going to have lots of good stuff going on there. But today we want to really dive in on DNA. So for those that aren't familiar, I'd love to just hear the short overview of what is DNA and what is it that you guys are up to?
Yeah, sure, Tyler. So DNA is essentially about the tokenization of physical goods with a focus on security and anti-counterfeiting. But that's just the start of the journey, because we'll go probably into this a bit further a bit later. But from our backgrounds in commodities, we saw how poor documentation and how fraud is so rampant, and there are not a lot of tools out there to kind of fight that. So we really believe in the utility aspect of the blockchain, and thinks that the industry is really just in its infancy. So we're very, very excited to be building a first step to help luxury brands protect their goods, so that consumers, when they buy something online or through a third party, they can prove the provenance, but also once they own the product, they can prove ownership.
Right on. So this concept of ownership and tracking, and of course the decentralized and distributed ledger, has been a current through blockchain from the beginning in the genesis. But something that's really interesting about what DNA is doing is tackling this challenge that we haven't seen tackled, I think, in a really compelling fashion, which is to say, how do we handle kind of this interfacing of like the physical world and the digital world? How do we start thinking about how these notions of ownership as recorded on the ledger can actually impact other aspects of life, of business, of community? I'd love to hear a little bit about how you folks kind of think about this and kind of what that DNA ethos is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so maybe a good place to start is like kind of how we decided to do this. So as we said, Douglas and I started off in the commodities markets, and obviously when you buy goods, you get a lot of documentation. It's sometimes easily frauded. There are instances where people were financing inventories of a commodity in a warehouse or in a bunker, and then they found out that like 6-7 banks are financing it, and it was rampant fraud. And it's not till the tide goes out that you realize he's not wearing swim trunks, as Warren Buffett famously says. So we encountered these issues a lot. And last year, when the NFT market kind of blew up around art, we looked at this and we thought, okay, like this is actually the next iteration after cryptocurrencies, and the next iteration after that is going to be utility, because those art NFTs are super interesting, and it's a great way for artists to monetize their art and to get their art to a huge audience. But we really saw the utility aspect as it is the real power of the blockchain. The way we transact on the internet at the moment is so anonymous, and if you're not buying direct from a producer or a brand, sometimes you have no way of knowing if it's counterfeited or not. And we think that infrastructure, what blockchain is going to do, is it's going to create, on one end, the ability to have that infrastructure to just transparently know where something comes from, to fight counterfeiting. But eventually, it's also going to be a new way for brands to interact with their customers, because you sell a physical product and the person walks away, it's gone. And the brand doesn't have any way of kind of accessing that. If it gets resold in the resale market, they have no visibility over that. And it's kind of a lost opportunity, because there's another customer that potentially had never bought from the brand that has suddenly appeared. And it might even be a way to reward them, right? To reward ownership. We're very excited, because it's, again, in its infancy. This is, the next kind of iteration or evolution that the blockchain can enable us to build out into the world, to create an infrastructure that's just going to make dealing on the internet or dealing through third parties just a safer and more secure experience for all.
That's fantastic. So I think that one of the themes here that I love and think is so important is, as we sort of see this next phase of growth with NFTs, looking beyond just these use cases where NFT is a record of some sort of rights or ownership or privileges associated with art or JPEGs, but rather saying, how can we look at this infrastructure as this key advance in terms of permissions, in terms of rights, in terms of tracking, in terms of really connecting the blockchain with other effects in the world. Getting beyond just what can you interact with that is just there, and getting to what can we interact with and enable that people will be touching and using in their daily lives. I'd love to hear, how did you kind of develop this perspective, and what were some kind of formative experiences that led the team to this particular path in building DNA?
I think this is where Abraham probably has the best story, because we met in 2017. At the time, I had invested in a startup called Graffiti, which was a search engine for charts, and they were in an incubator. And the guys from the startup were just introducing me to the other startups, and I met Abraham at the time, and he was building out what was a proto NFT at the time. And I thought he was an absolute lunatic, because my mind couldn't get around it. And put my hand up. I was total noob, and I just didn't understand it. But what he was trying to do was very, very compelling. And Abraham, I don't know if you want to chime in here, because I think it's very powerful.
Sure. Well, the startup that I was with at that incubator, I was a co-founder there. I was the CDO, and it was an art-related startup. Basically, we had we have the page still going. Conversational platform where visual artists basically talk to each other through drawings. And we started in 2012, and across the years we tried to monetize the content that the users were creating in a way that rewarded them for the time that they were investing in the platform and for all the beautiful pieces that they were creating. And sometime in 2017, just a couple of months before getting into the startup, one of my co-founders, Beatriz, she started digging into blockchain, and basically she was able to contact the CryptoPunks guys at the time. They were amazing. They basically told us to use the contract, and like they were very crucial into us getting into Ethereum. So we took that contract, we modified, we added the concept of prints into that contract. It was an ERC20. And I guess our biggest contribution at the time was royalties. We wanted the artists to always receive their fair share from the content they created. So we put into I think we lost Douglas. We put into the contract royalties for first sales and for second market sales. And then at that time when I met Adam, I think what we did was pretty revolutionary. People didn't understand this. Sometime later, ERC 721 came. We tried to upgrade. Of course, we had to migrate everything that was sold on the ERC20. So upgradability on Ethereum wasn't a big thing there. The main issue being that whatever you put into a contract as data, then you have to move, right? So we did the ERC 721, and we went again ahead and tried to make it, try to make the royalties embedded into the contract. But by doing so, we were effectively making the contract not being able to be used by the exchange or by the marketplaces like OpenSea. We tried to talk to them. We tried to get them to help us and work together to build into the standard the royalties, but it wasn't a priority for them. So we still did it, and we took the decision to make the contract not usable by the exchanges. We said, like, okay, we'll make our own marketplace, and if people want to trade and buy, they'll have to do it through our page. So we were championing royalties from the very beginning. And at some point, well, I had to, wasn't actually making any money out of data, so I had to move away. And Adam, when he was thinking with Douglas about the DNA, they contacted me, and I started looking into it. I think I had at least a year away from blockchain. And on DNA, on Marmalade and Kadena, I saw a lot of the things that were an obstacle for me on Ethereum actually solved. So that was like basically the thing that moved, like, I guess that moved me into like jumping into the DNA, and also believing in the problem that we want to solve.
Abraham, I love that. I mean, I think a few things I want to pull out. So one is that great observation you made about royalties, how on Ethereum royalties are actually not in the standard itself. It's something that happens at the smart contract implementation level. And so that means if you have something on OpenSea and move it to Rarible, there's issues in terms of royalty enforcement. And that's something that, of course, Marmalade has royalties baked in at the standard level.
Definitely. The policies, I think it's very powerful for the whole standard. I think what Stuart and Will made is amazing. A lot of things that, like, again, things that I was trying to solve, that basically we were just against everyone else. They did it from the beginning, and coming from the very same people that actually made the technology. I think it's very powerful because it speaks a lot about how they approach problems and how they see the priorities, and I think that's great.
So I want to switch over to some questions from the community here. First up, from Retire a Millionaire Sooner, what's DNA's edge over its competitors?
I'm happy to take this one. Most of our competitors are actually building on Ethereum-based protocols, right? So at least the most advanced. I think that's going to change because, Kadena has done a great job with the eco, and there are a lot of exciting projects that are coming. So I think Kadena does give you a competitive advantage. Firstly, because, when we sounded a lot of our customer base, the two things they were really concerned about were gas fees and environmental impact. And, Kadena solves for those two problems. Then obviously Marmalade is just great tech, right? So it allows us to build on a base that is already very, very secure. And where the contracts will always perform as you code them. So that for us was very important, and that's a Kadena aspect of what distinguishes us from some of the more kind of advanced projects out there. Beyond that, like what we thought, and Douglas and I are not, we believe in the crypto space, we believe in blockchain, but we're in no ways technical. Not as technical as Abraham for sure, but even by normal standards. So what we thought was very, very important was that if we built a platform and for it to go mainstream and for this to become the ubiquitous technology that everybody used, it had to be accessible. So our platform is designed so that anyone can use it, and you don't really need to know or own crypto. To be honest, you could use it and not even know that it's on the blockchain. It all happens in the back end. So that's kind of our edge over our competitors is the ability that anyone can use it. And then we have a bit of a bespoke approach as well, as we're trying to figure out the market, because it's in its infancy. And it's funny, these conversations, you end up talking with guys who are just completely converted, and sometimes they're well above our knowledge, not Abraham's, but definitely mine. And others are just completely newbies, and they don't like, when you start talking to them about terms that they just don't understand. So, the power of the blockchain is there. A lot of people don't necessarily understand it, but for it to work, it has to be accessible. And that's, I think, our edge over our competitors.
Right on. We're going to continue right along because there's a second great question here, making my life easy as moderator. What's DNA's strategy to get well-known luxury brands, cologne, perfume, apparels, cars, electronics, etc., to do business with DNA?
Douglas, you've been super quiet. I'm going to throw this one your way.
Well, we're taking an approach at the moment where we're really listening to the brands that we're speaking to. So, for example, I'll give you an example. We obviously went live with Steve Olson, legendary skateboarder turned artist. He's a pioneer of the skateboarding world. And we essentially built 14 certificates of authenticity for him and his exhibition in New York. Very simple, but it was a first use case. Our second use case is working with a jewelry company called Schulin, which is one of the biggest jewelers in Austria. And we are essentially, we're tokenizing pretty much all their inventory. And we're working with them on a one-of-one piece, which is going to go live with a huge or very well-known auction house in the coming weeks. So essentially, we are learning from our customers at the moment and building for them with the approach of eventually commoditizing our product offering for luxury brands, artists, streetwear brands. So we're kind of at that phase now where we're listening and trying to solve our customers' problems.
Yeah, I think it's also important to note that because this is really nascent as a technology, different customers have different needs, and we do have some adaptability around there. Because essentially certain functions basically would work for two different needs. Like for instance, if you just kind of want to have visibility over your resale market, the token allows you to do that. But you could also have another use case where you have an ESG plan where you sell a product and at some point it's beyond its shelf life and you want to just make sure that you can close the loop and recycle it, but also incentivize your customer to bring it back to you, and then potentially incentivize them to buy a new product from you. So with the luxury brands that we've been speaking, and the strategy has been to say, okay, look, like we have this exciting technology and we want to understand your problems and we want to help build a solution using the blockchain to solve these problems. And we found that for the luxury brands, as a first instance, counterfeiting is a big issue. It's a $45 trillion a year problem. That of 60-70% of that is luxury brands. So there's a lot of lost revenue. There's one big conglomerate. They spend $17 million a year just on lawyers to fight counterfeiters. So wouldn't you rather just have a product that does that and then it also allows you to do other cool things with your customers? It kind of feels like a no-brainer, and I think that the market is starting to realize that. And obviously, Kadena has given us a lot of power with these brands because it essentially, as I said, solves two of the things that they were most concerned about, which was the environmental impact and then the gas fees. So we're very happy to be building on Kadena. It's definitely made our mission easier.
Right on. Thank you, Adam. I wanted to dive in a little bit to something that you alluded to, where you started talking about some of the specific needs that a retailer might have that gets into some of these elements of minting marketplaces, not just NFTs. Abraham, if I could direct towards you, I'd love to hear a little bit more details and depth about what specific Marmalade features are you particularly excited about, and how does that kind of enable what you're doing at DNA?
First of all, just the contract. I think the contract, there is a reason for why we haven't deployed our own version of Marmalade. I think the contract is very well written. Like the logic behind every single part of the contract it's just great. And then just the plug and play ability of having the policies around where you can define different behaviors that a specific token will have, that is just a plus for us. Security on Kadena, not only on Marmalade, is very robust, in my opinion. The way that key sets are used in the contract, it's basically one of the things that when I was evaluating Kadena, when Adam asked me to look into it, it really got my attention. I think it's very powerful. So yeah, I guess from what I've seen and from what I've experienced right now, so far, it's just the way to go if you want to have a secure NFT platform. We've seen what happened just recently with a lot of like the basically pool of tokens that happen on, I think it was OpenSea. So I don't see just yet. I don't think people always find a way, right? But the way I see it right now, I think it's very difficult for people to just try to and hack an account. For instance, like the security aspect of Kadena is very robust.
It's also important to just note that, like, when we started building, Marmalade wasn't released. And we're building the infrastructure around it, and it was some nervous time because it was we had some ideas of what it was going to look like, but then when it came out, we were really blown away. I mean, if you want to do what we're doing, or if you really want to have an NFT that has a value, it's really important that it behaves exactly as you want it to, right? Or else you essentially have just created something that a marketplace is going to monetize or use however they feel fit, right? And that's just doesn't work, right? Like, if you're an artist and part of it is you want to get paid a royalty, well, then your enforceability is down to whether the exchange does it. That's not how it should work. I mean, it's not a smart contract. It's an option. And so we were really, really drawn to Marmalade. And if we can send one message beyond the fact that we're doing exciting things, it's definitely, we love the Marmalade, and you should definitely spread the Marmalade. There are more use cases, the better. It's a great piece of technology, and we're super happy to be building on it.
Love it. We're here to spread the Marmalade. All right. So I have a more situational question here, which is, I think, pretty interesting to connect to a concrete situation from Barbaric Puma. So if Rolex utilized this and my Rolex got stolen, when the cops find it, would they be able to validate who the true owner was and get it back to me? Sounds like a good use case. Could we sort of talk through a little bit about, unpack this question for me about what would that sort of require in terms of, like, on the physical side, and then what is kind of the vision here, and does this fit into kind of what DNA is trying to tackle?
I think actually Rolex is a super interesting use case. I'll answer this question, but there's something else that I'd like to tack on at the end of it, if that's okay. So if Rolex were to use it, right, and all the information were embedded on the blockchain, a serial number and all that, then essentially, you would have, it's not a tracking device per se, but if that watch were ever to be in a resale market and all the dealers were certified to, be able to verify that that's an authentic one, they would be able to potentially access it if Rolex gave them access to it to see if there was any distinguishing factors, the model, the serial number, any other information. And if they have a counterfeiting tool in the watch, they can also embed it into the token, so that something that might not be visible to the buyer, but that either the brand or its service centers could access to verify one for one the watch. If the watch is never recovered, then essentially that token would be burned. So if it ever showed up again, then you would know. And it's not an online database that can be hacked. It's not a piece of paper or anything. So there's real validity in this. For Rolex, the other flip side of it is, they have a real problem where they sell a watch, like some of their steel watches sell for like $8,000-$10,000, and then sell in the resale market the next day for 20-30 grand. And they don't like that, right? They don't want the people they reward with these high value watches to go and flip them. And in the Rolex market, there are two prices, right? There's just the watch, and there's the watch with the papers. So essentially, if you have a token around it, you not only create a digital record of it that's immutable and forever there, so that the watch is always kind of secured against that. But also for Rolex, it allows them to, kind of track where their watches are going. And if you are a collector and you bought all these watches and you bought a bunch of watches that perhaps you didn't like, but Rolex made you buy them because if you wanted the special watch, you needed to buy that. You could reward the owner direct, right? And it's not a wallet where he could send it out. It's the actual physical ownership of that token that gets rewarded. And we think that's a quite powerful case because, if you're a brand like Rolex, you value loyalty. And if you value loyalty, you should reward it. And this is kind of a new way that you could look at CRM, that you could control your market and make sure that your products end up where you want them to be.
Terrific. Thank you. We have a follow-up question that came in live as you're answering about a little bit more about mechanics, how this works, from TD McCarty. How is any of this possible without owner identity verification?
Well, at the end, it's there's a direct transaction between the buyer and the seller. And then, at that point of sale, there's the transfer of the token. So, at some point, you do have some visibility of your client. Now, when it goes into the resale market, there isn't necessarily an identity, but there is, a location where this token is being held, and there's access to that owner through that token. So, it's at the discretion of the owner whether they want to be identified or not. But if they're in line for a reward, or if they need to get their product serviced or whatever, the token would allow them to go back to the seller of the brand, the initial seller of brand, and say, look, like I bought this and this was a transaction, and then here, can you repair this? It just like creates maybe. I just don't see how you really need the identity of the owner necessarily to verify that it's the owner. I think, as long as the transactions are valid and they have the token, then that should give you some comfort that everything, is above board and it's not a stolen good.
Adam, do you want to talk more about the anti-counterfeiting measures? So the NFC chips, QR codes.
Yeah, look, I mean, there are a range of anti-counterfeiting measures that brands have access to and that we can incorporate to the token, and every brand has a different view, right? So we spoke to one really old luxury house, and their answer was, our products they'll last for 100 years and 3 generations will own them. So an NFC doesn't work because the battery life is not long enough. And we were like, okay, that's very interesting. And so they wanted something that just can, like for one, tell you this is this product, right? So whether if it's a purse, that just the graining of that leather that is so unique and that texture that they can embed that. So I think so we can integrate these technologies into the blockchain, and we do it on a case-by-case basis. NFCs are probably the most widely used at the moment. But I think that's a really exciting space. It's going to change a great deal. And I think blockchain is definitely going to drive that.
Right on. So I think this is an incredible discussion. I think this element of the interface with the physical world is always very interesting, right? Because it really is on a case-by-case, product-by-product basis. If you are Rolex, you have certain mechanical restrictions as to what size of something you can put on it, right? Maybe you could put a QR code underneath the watch itself that isn't exposed to the person, but maybe that ruins the aesthetics of this being this beautiful mechanical device through and through. And so a solution that Rolex might want could differ from a solution that Nike might want, depending on the product. And so I think that this sort of motivates some of this case-by-case discussion that you're giving, where depending on the retailer's needs, there's already different technology and different actual implementations that are already there that you can potentially hook into. And then it's a question of like, well, then how does that interface with the digital world? One question I had is getting at the kind of the so what of it. So once we have this ability to track some of these items and goods and do these kind of verifications in a digital sense, what does that enable? If we could sort of think and dream for a moment, what could be built on top of DNA or with DNA that would then offer new possibilities that wouldn't be possible without?
I think there's a lot of cool stuff that that we'll be able to do. I mean, first of all, like, you know, these days everything seems to be an exclusive drop, right? And you feel like whenever there's a drop, like the bots beat you to it, and then you get massive FOMO, which I guess is our generation's malaise, right? So we hope to fight FOMO, so that if you miss it out, that you could still track the product and potentially, you know, bid for it and say, look, I really want this. Would you sell it to me? I mean, and then you would know it's authentic. It's not, you know, like you're getting it on Craigslist or something. So I think that's one cool potential feature. You know, I think that it's, you know, for an artist, it could be your opus, right? Like you've digitalized all of your art. So when, you know, your maybe your foundation is taken over at that point, and you know, like you're long gone, and the museum wants to do an exhibition of your art, like they'll be able to reach out to the collectors and get those things. You know, I think that you could potentially insure a product directly because you have a token, and, you know, the insurance company would see it. I think, you know, like it could make life easier if you're going through customs. You know, again, with the Rolex example, if you have a theft, you know, you could share it and say, okay, here's a token. Like if you find it, like these are the information. And there are probably loads of other use cases that we haven't really figured out. And that, you know, like, and that's kind of what's really cool about building on Kadena and Marmalade, is it actually, it just feels like it's, you know, it's a blockchain technology that's kind of built for the future. You know, like every time Stuart talks, like, yeah, it just blows us away. And we, you know, he just is so forward thinking about these things, just the scalability, the fact that it's a proof of work and not proof of stake, which seems to be the flavor of the month, but, you know, is that, you know, like if you're really believe in crypto because of decentralization, all that, it kind of defeats the purpose. Essentially, you know, it is a central bank, because the central bank is the proof of stake. So yeah, I think Kadena just really does give you kind of the legs to build for the future, because you know, it just feels like a technology that is very prescient of what's coming, you know, and that like should be around and shouldn't have the limitations that we've seen. And the same with Marmalade, you know. I mean, I'll never forget when Abraham, you know, when we told him, he was super lukewarm at the beginning. He was put off by Pact, and then he learned to love it, and like he literally had an Archimedes eureka moment. He was like, "This is great! Like this is the things I was trying to solve." And then we sent him to a Kadena event, and he met Stuart and Stuart Haber as well. And like, you know, he was totally starstruck. And like, that's also kind of shows you the talent, you know, that Kadena attracts. So I think, yeah, I'm very excited. I'm excited to see what you guys do with the eco. We're very excited to be part of it. You know, we always joke around that we want to put the DNA in Kadena. But we, you know, like, I think just watch this space. I think Kadena and also DNA, like there's a lot of exciting things that we're going to do, you know, together and independently. But yeah, I'm also very excited to see use cases that we haven't thought about.
That's really awesome. So we're getting towards the end of our time here, but I think we have a few more minutes so we can take maybe a couple more questions before we wrap up. One that we discussed briefly a little bit earlier, but sounds like there's some interest in getting a little more explicit from Jules around how is the DNA token linked to the physical good? Chip, QR code, my guess is all the above, but maybe we could expand and talk a little bit about that.
Correct. So it is all of the above. And it depends on your the sophistication that you need, right? So obviously we talked about the different technology, and NFC is pretty easy to set up, and, you know, is accessible. When we're talking about this luxury brand and what they're trying to do, essentially you need an infrastructure, right? Both at your production site and also kind of at your service support, in order to be able to verify these things, right? So so the DNA token is linked to the physical good primarily through information. So any kind of information that's unique to this product is put onto the blockchain, and then yeah, we add security measures on top of that. The other thing is obviously the PAC policies give you a lot of security, because you can control the behavior of the token. and so you can always also verify the minter, which helps to prove the provenance.
Right on. So I think this is, again, gets at this sort of beauty of Marmalade and sort of this key reality for retailers, which is that not every retailer has the same need or the same use case. And depending on the actual good, whether it's a ticket or a luxury brand good or something beyond my wildest imaginations, that the actual needs in terms of how people may want to interact with that on the blockchain is going to be different. And so as a result, the degree of investment in the security model and the degree of, how are people going to actually use these tokens in a digital economy are going to vary. So I think that's exciting to say, look, this is a platform technology that you aren't just going after one niche of good, but rather saying, look, there's this fundamental challenge of how we solve some of these custody and verification and authenticity in a trustless, decentralized manner. And when we solve that, it actually is applicable to a range of industries. So I think that's very exciting. I think we'll take maybe one more question from the audience before I'll have a final last question.
And Ty, just one thing to add to that. Another appeal of Kadena was, Stuart and Will worked for JP Morgan, built the blockchain for them. First of all, the fact that they convinced Jamie Dimon, like the most anti-crypto guy, to build a blockchain for his bank is massively impressive. But what we found as well, and is really helpful, right? Because we're building for widespread adoption. We really like the fact that these guys were looking at the real world, right? Because a lot of blockchain projects are kind of building this technology and then hoping that the world's going to adapt. But, that's easy for the early adopters, but not necessary for the rest of the curve, right? So the fact that they think like that really does help, because I think the philosophy that they have has really, shone through the technology. And that's why, we're starting with luxury because that's a space that has the urgent need. These are the early adopters, and obviously you need to prove your case. But the reality is that we really want to go deep, right? And we can go deep because of the underlying blockchain technology and the philosophy that we've done to wrap around that.
That's so terrific. Actually, I'm going to throw up one meme question because I thought it tickled me a little bit. Hereby has done some serious background research on me and asked, who is a bigger brain, Carl Dijsselroth, who's my PhD neuroscience advisor at Stanford, or Stuart Popejoy, who, of course, is the CEO of Kadena? The answer to that is, if you're trying to understand the mysteries and inner workings of the human brain, definitely pick Carl. But if you're trying to design a new global economy and build a billion-dollar business on blockchain and Web3, Stuart's your guy.
And
all
Stuart,
right.
Trust.
So the last question we'll take from the audience here is from TD McCarthy. Is DNA focusing on physical assets or digital as well as such as content? Would you want to capture both markets since they are bonded at times?
Well, look, our focus at the moment is really the physical. However, I could see how eventually this could be kind of a merger of the two, because if you have this physical token and people start to own them in a different way, so it's kind of like this extra layer to ownership. So it is a certificate of authenticity. It's a way to prove you own it, prove where it came from, but you can kind of go further. So, for instance, we're talking to the Schilin, this jeweler in Vienna. They're trying to capture a new audience, right? And the new audience likes jewelry, but doesn't necessarily consume like the older generations do. So, they're thinking like we could put art into it, inspiration. We can put kind of designs. So there is that digital aspect, and I think the digital aspect is very, very important because as humans we like to experience something, and you experience a physical object, but you could probably experience it deeper if you could kind of capture some of the philosophy or what like an artist or a creator was trying to do, right? So I don't think that these worlds are totally, disbanded. As they're probably closer. But yeah, our focus is the physical. even if we want to, still enhance that experience with certain digital aspects.
Right
And I
on.
think it's important for the brands, right? Because it's just a new way for them to access new customers and to change the way that they they're perceived and to reach a younger and different audience than their current customer base, which for luxury brands is for certain items at least it's a big it's a big gap that they need to bridge.
Right on. So this has been a fascinating discussion, and I think we're at the end of the time we have here, but want to give a few shout outs. So first of all, to stay in touch with DNA, you can follow them on Twitter at the DNA Tech. Also wanted to ask if you have a preferred way for people to get a hold of you, for those that are pretty want to learn more, want to join the team or be members of the community. How can people get involved?
Well, definitely reach out. We are very open to the community. Sharing is caring. In terms of knowledge, we want to help, and it's a very important philosophy of ours. So please reach out via Twitter, or you can email myself at Douglas@thedna.tech, Adam@thedna.tech, and Abraham@thedna.tech. If you have any questions, we're always open to arranging a call whenever.
Yeah, or reach out to us on Twitter. And as Douglas said, we're not just a company just trying to build a product. At the end, the end users and the community is very, very important. So look, if there are brands you want us to reach out to, if there are features that you really think we should be building, like, we are all ears, because at the end, we're building this for you guys. We appreciate you being on this and listening to us. And so please, just get to us, and we'll try and respond as quickly as possible. And if you're talented and you're passionate and you want to join us, please just reach out. We're really open to the community, as Douglas said, and there are not a lot of Pact developers out there. So if you know Pact, please do get in contact with us. So we'd love to hear from you. There'll be plenty of more, I think, with all the initiatives that you guys are doing at Kadena. So we're excited.
For the builders and the Kadena army in the audience, if you're new to the community, definitely come check out the Kadena Twitter, Kadena.io. Join us on Discord. If you're building with Marmalade, we'd love to see you on the Marmalade channel of the Kadena Discord. There's some great discussions happening there. If you're building and you have questions about Marmalade, go on Stack Overflow and tag Pact-Lang. And we'll make sure that we get questions answered by either core team or community. And finally, I just want to give a huge thank you to everyone here with us here today in the audience. You are why we are able to be up here, and we're so grateful for the support and belief in the mission, and so excited to support builders in making that journey to building great projects and great businesses on Kadena. This is just the beginning. We're going to have a lot more of these discussions. We're super grateful to the DNA team here. Abraham, Douglas, Adam, what a pleasure to have you. I'm going to give you a round of applause here. You've been fantastic.
Thank you
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And one last thing, if you're in New York and you want to own one of the first tokens, check out at the Medium Exchange Gallery in Chelsea. Steve Olson's beautiful explosions, really cool art with a token. And some of the few first tokens that were minted on Kadena using Marmalade. So a little piece of history.
Indeed.
Hell yeah. Signing off for now. Be well.
Thank you, guys.